Hello and welcome to the My My Shot of Life podcast with your co-hosts Steven
and Victor.
On this week's episode, we'll be discussing Black Mirror, one of the most popular shows on Netflix nowadays, and we'll also be drinking Bird Dog apple flavored whiskey. Later, we'll be talking about a recurring segment, Toilet Talk, and our subject of the week,
toilet height.
Yeah, and since we're both two short guys, that is a big factor for both of us. So as we drink our whiskey, talk our subjects, we will be wrapping up the episode and discussing our rating of the whiskey at the end of the podcast. Enjoy the show. So today's subject, let's go ahead and get started here. Got the whiskey in hand.
Cheers.
Man, that is a very bold smell for a flavored whiskey.
Very appley.
Too sweet. Oh man, that thing hits you hard in the front too.
It's too sweet.
It's a little bit overpowering once it hits your tongue.
I agree.
But then whenever you taste it, it's really sweet.
Yeah.
It's just really strange.
It's not terrible. It is very strange.
Yeah, if you like cocktails, I would say liqueurs.
This would mix well in something.
Yeah, it would. I mean, but I'm saying like if you like flavored vodkas, you would like this. Like I guess it's technically called whiskey and it's brown, so
flavored whiskey.
It just tastes so weird. Okay, so our subject of the evening, of the day, Black Mirror, one of my favorite shows on Netflix, and a show that Victor actually got me started onto by watching. I think the first episode that I watched was Playtest.
I believe it was
season 3. So to me, I thought that episode was very, I don't know, it didn't really hit me like some of the other episodes, but I enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed some of my favorite episodes in the overall series.
I would agree.
But what was a season or an episode that I guess that hit you pretty hard, or something that you enjoyed? Something that made you, I guess the biggest thing with Black Mirror is that you watch an episode and then when you get done with it, you're left thinking about it for hours or days.
Yeah. I think the very first episode that I watched was the very first episode of Black Mirror, which I'm blanking on the name right now, but it involved the Prime Minister and the pig. Without discussing too many spoilers, I honestly, at the end of the episode, I debated even continuing to watch Black Mirror. It had that much of an impact on me. I was just freaked out by what I had just witnessed.
I can't really remember why. I guess he ended up doing the sexual act that he ended up performing at the end of the episode. I mean, do you recall why I did that? Or we're gonna,
yeah,
we're just probably gonna go into spoiler territory throughout this podcast. So for those people who are listening to this podcast, spoilers are abound, or a front, or a foot, or whatever.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. So, be aware that when you're listening to this, if you haven't seen every episode or haven't even caught up with season 4, we might touch on some things that, you haven't seen yet. So
beware.
If you want to watch this episode or listen to this episode, you might want to catch up on your Black Mirror, if you even cared to do so. But the first episode that you were talking about was the national anthem.
The national anthem.
That was the Prime Minister having sex with a pig.
That's pretty much it. So,
but what was even...
Some important person's daughter gets abducted.
Was it the Queen?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh.
Some princess.
Someone in Parliament.
A princess, I think.
Okay.
Princess gets abducted, and the only way to get her back is for the Prime Minister to perform this act.
Right.
On a pig.
The whole thing was like it was a terrorist plot, forcing someone to do something against their will. It's like a hostage situation in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
That one actually was one of the ones that just didn't have the technology that the series has become to evolve into. Is that as we watch new seasons of the series, what new technologies are hitting these episodes that are making us think more, and I guess obviously as technology expands at an exponential rate that we could expect in the future. I mean, they're kind of becoming I don't know, not synonymous, but it could happen in real life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very realistic. The technology that they're introducing.
Right. And so what episode would you say the technology played a very important role in, at least from a viewer standpoint?
I mean, a ton of episodes. One of my favorites was season 1, episode 3, titled "The Entire History of You."
Oh yeah, that's a great episode.
Yeah, it's a solid episode. It involves technology, which is known as the grain. It's basically this little kind of bean-looking device it's implanted right behind the ear, and it kind of stores like everything you witness and experience. It stores there, and you have a little tiny remote that you can use to go back through all of your memories and everything involved in your life and kind of scan everything through.
I think the episode does a great job of the consequences of having such technology, in that I guess you're able to relive past events, both good and bad. I mean, for those people who had great high schools and were the quarterback of the football team, maybe that's something that someone would relive a lot. But then again, you have the other side of things where you live your life and then you face these awkward or uncomfortable, or you may have done some wrong in your life, and you keep replaying the past, and you keep bringing yourself down because you're bringing up something that you've done so long ago, or maybe not even that long ago, but you can't even put it behind you because you have this ability to pull up any moment in your life, clear, like 100% clearly. You know, you can't forget about it because it's easy to pull up an HD video of something you've seen or experienced in your life.
Absolutely. And even like the great things too. I know there's a sex scene in there where the two participants, the husband and wife, are both like logged into a memory of the best sex that they had with each other. So
is that when they're actually having sex?
Yeah. They're not actually like in the moment having sex. They're just like having sex, but
they're remembering how spontaneous.
Yeah, they're
or
both
like how
using the grain at the same time to
yeah, that's really odd.
look back on
creepy.
the best sex that they had.
So that means all you have to do is have really good sex once, and then you can reuse that over and over again.
Yep.
But for that episode, again in spoilers territory, talking about how that guy would relive his moment, or I guess moments in his life where he thought his wife rather, was cheating on him, and eventually realizing that it was true, and then the kid that he had was not his kid. And so it shows an example of you can dwell on something in the past, or you can use, I guess, events from the past to determine events in the future. And is that really even a good thing? Because had he not had that grain, he wouldn't have thought about it as much, or at least he wouldn't have much proof, and then maybe he would have had a happier life being ignorant to the fact. So, not necessarily a good or a bad thing, at least from my perspective, but still interesting nonetheless.
Definitely interesting.
One of the episodes that I thought was pretty intense and left me, man, I think I was sitting on my bed watching it, and I couldn't even talk about the episode because I was still processing everything that happened. White Christmas was probably one of my favorites just because of the ending that it left, but some of the technology that was in that episode alone was very creative, and then it tackles a very heavy, I guess, ethical dilemma.
It's easily the most complicated episode. There's a lot going on in it. It's they describe it as a special as opposed to just an episode, but I mean, there are multiple types of technology involved. There are ethical and moral dilemmas like abound within it. So,
well, yeah, I think with the fact that you can block someone out of your entire life, literally block them, you can the person still exists, but you can make it so that when you're seeing that person, you don't hear what they're saying, you don't see their face, which I think is an odd thing because that person could come after you and attack you, which we see in the episode happens. but you don't even know if that person's gonna look at you weird or is gonna come after you, because I believe that. Yeah, they can. Can they see you?
I think they can, and it works like the other way around. So like, the wife of one of the characters blocks the husband,
Right.
because he's been like lying to her. I don't think he cheated on her at any point, but like he was just being not a good husband generally.
Well, he was doing some shady business stuff.
Yeah. And she blocked him, and then it shows her from his perspective, and she is all like pixelated, and
Yeah, like a static TV, like a. But from her perspective, do we ever even see that? Do we see if she can see him and just chooses to ignore him? I mean, do you? Like, I'm guessing that both parties are blocked. The person who's doing the blocking has the discretion of taking that on or off, but they also don't see that person who's pixelated or that person they blocked, because that person is pixelated to them. At least that was my understanding of the episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, you can't even see if the person that you blocked if that's the person, that person would be blocked off, obviously. But there are people who have committed certain crimes, pedophiles, right? Mm-hmm. They would be red. So the government or law enforcement agencies could have that ability to block people as well. Yeah. So you get the ethics of, is that moral? And does that mean that other pedophiles can see other pedophiles?
Like,
and so now
without the pixelation.
Right, right. Since they are both in the red category.
Yeah.
And what does that do? Does that create a mob of pedophiles?
And so the reason why this guy gets categorized as a pedophile, he moonlights essentially as a kind of like a hitch, but not really a dirty hitch.
Yeah, I mean, that's about right. He was kind of prepping that guy through.
Right. He helps people, maybe socially awkward people, get laid, basically.
Yeah.
Guys specifically. And so he uses a device called an eye link, where the person installs it and you basically get the chance to see from their perspective, and you have a little earpiece as well. So he was coaching this guy because he could see what the guy was doing and hear everything that was going on, and so he was coaching him through the situation. And there are like other guys online that Matt, the guy who runs this service, invites on, and so there's multiple people watching this all happen. And the kid involved is I think he goes to an office party, meets this girl, and they go back to her place, and she ultimately like kills him, like drugs him and kills him. And
it was so weird that I guess she felt she had planned that beforehand.
She was she was like high on drugs and stuff.
Yeah, but she had already had an idea of how she would. It seemed like she was already planning out murdering somebody, but then realized that he was the perfect guy.
Lure someone back and kill him. And so he ended up becoming like an accessory to this,
because he witnessed
a witness, yeah,
right? Because he was basically the eyes, that guy's second eyes.
Did not do anything about it. So,
yeah, I mean think about the other ways you could use that technology, though. Say you were, I think, I thought about this earlier, in that you could sell your right to your experience, and we maybe even talked about this earlier in the week. If you were someone who was a professional snowboarder or a risk taker, or like these Red Bull athletes, you could sell your eyes, and it would be your experience, and it would be basically an alternative form of GoPro.
Right. So like you can vicariously live through these other people.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like I said, it's basically GoPro, but you're seeing exactly what they're seeing, and I guess you could get into some really tricky stuff, because like, what if I'm gonna bring this up, but what if a porn star decided to do that, and then they have a personal life as well, and say that their professional life blends into their personal life? Is that inappropriate? And then at that point, do you have to start having people sign waivers to say you're on tape? So I think it's a very interesting technology. And obviously, you have other ways that you can execute the use of it. But it's, again, interesting nonetheless.
And just one aspect of the episode.
Right. I mean, this is a 3-part episode, and we haven't touched on the other part, which was the ability to duplicate someone's consciousness, which to me is extremely creepy. I honestly don't know if we'll find a way, at least maybe in the next 100 years, to duplicate or find out how to isolate a individual's consciousness.
Right. And so that's what Matt's day job was setting up these devices called cookies, where people who signed forms to purposely like have their consciousness recreated and stuffed inside this device called a cookie, he would sell those and set them up and run the newly discovered consciousness through the drill of like what they are now. Like, hey, your real life person decided to take their consciousness and stuff you inside of here to be their personal assistant, is basically how that goes down.
They just did a Command C or a Control C and Control P.
Yeah.
Dumped them in the Google Assistant or the Alexa box and said that you are not real. You don't necessarily have a physical being, but you can imagine yourself as having one if it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
But you don't eat, you don't drink, you don't sleep. You just do the bidding of yourself.
You basically run the smart home for your person.
And I'm sure obviously you could use it for other things as well, but it is insane to me how
that's even possible.
That would be impossible. But
and we'll touch on it later in the episode because they do something similar-ish in the later episode, where the cookies are, it is known. The person who is having their consciousness recreated and stuffed into the cookie that's what they want. Now,
are you referring to the last episode of the 4th season?
No, I'm referring to the
USS McAllister.
Yeah.
Well, there's also an episode in Black Museum, which is the very last episode of season 4, the most recent season that came out in the end of December, where you could take pretty much the consciousness, but also give that person the ability to feel the exact same thing that the person or entity feels. And so you can, eventually this person is put inside of a teddy bear. And so if you hug that teddy bear, it can feel the hug. And it can hear what you say, and it can see you, but it can't communicate. So that's another instance too. To me, the biggest part, if this ever were to be real, is, do they have rights? The consciousness beings, would they have rights? Do they really feel anything? Because we see in the White Christmas episode that your main character, Matt, you said, right, basically abuses the consciousness by fast forwarding through weeks of time, which in our perspective would be seconds, but to the entity or the consciousness, it felt like they were in the same room for 24 hours times 14 or 12 or whatever days. And so that would make a person crazy because they would have no one to talk to. I feel like I was going to a point. I don't know if that was the point or not.
I mean, whether or not you can argue that copies of consciousnesses have rights or like the ability to
Right, that was it.
feel.
Yeah. So do you draw the line there?
Because the way they express the consciousnesses in all of the episodes where this takes place, I think there's 3. White Christmas, USS McAllister, and Black Museum.
Sure.
But they take the perspective of the consciousnesses.
They have their own perspective.
Yeah, and they're like characters essentially in
right.
the
They
story.
think for themselves.
Yeah, they think for themselves. They are completely self-sufficient, functioning minds.
Mm-hmm.
And so just because they don't have bodies necessarily, or real bodies,
Right.
in the real world. Like, you're essentially trapping these minds, these people.
And if you terminate one of these things, that's actually something I don't think we've seen in an episode, is terminating a consciousness. That was in the Cookie, or that was in the USS McAllister.
Mm-hmm.
We've never seen anyone terminated, and so we don't know what happens if you're stuck at, say you're this consciousness in the Cookie, and then the Cookie gets deleted. Does that mean that your consciousness ceased to exist, or does that mean that you are now in a black void and you drive yourself insane forever? I don't know. Probably not the latter, but who knows? Maybe that's like real life.
And so another character whose consciousness gets stuffed inside a cookie in the episode White Christmas, his name is Joe. And so Matt and Joe have spent all this time together in a cabin in the woods, and they haven't spoken to each other something like 5 years or whatever. And they finally, on Christmas one day, decide to start talking, and they're eating and all that jazz, and start talking about random things. And it ultimately goes on to Joe's life and how his wife ends up leaving him with their daughter, going to live with the grandparents, and turns out his wife dies, and it's just the daughter and the grandfather, and Joe is trying to hunt down his daughter to find her, to get her, because Beth refused to give contact and custody to Joe. And so they kind of go along the whole way, and eventually he confesses to the fact that yes, he found them, and he ended up killing the grandfather because he wouldn't give up custody of the child. And the daughter actually ends up dying. There's a blizzard, and she ends up dying in the blizzard trying to get help for the grandfather as he lays dying.
And you can't see her because she pretty much blends in with the snow because she's blocked off.
Yep. So he wasn't able to see her because she was blocked to him.
Right, and so
the mother.
So the end of the episode is basically him confessing this to Matt, who has been the guy who's convincing these cookies to kind of either do his bidding, or his job is to break the cookies, I guess. In a sense.
What Joe didn't know was that he was in a cookie the whole time, and so Matt was picking away at his consciousness, trying to get his consciousness to confess to the murders, so that Matt could actually get out of prison.
Right, and then the Matt that's in prison has no idea this even is happening. So that's another ethical dilemma in its own right. Would it be fair to make a duplicate consciousness of an individual to determine if that person has committed a crime? And I guess you could argue that, well, if they're a criminal, they've given up their right. But then you don't know if they're a criminal.
Right.
And so how is that fair?
Right.
Obviously, in this case, this person was guilty and probably deserved it. But, I mean, that person's left on repeat for thousands and thousands of years as it goes by every single second, and is left in the house alone.
His
consciousness, right. Reminding himself that he's killed his daughter, as well as a terrible Christmas song plays on a loop forever.
It's true. It's terrible.
So, is that not torture?
Yeah.
It's terrible. Getting into a similar subject, we talked about the consciousness in White Christmas, but there was also a similar type of duplicating of consciousness in USS McAllister, which was one of my more liked episodes in season 4.
McAllister.
What about it?
You keep saying McAllister.
Oh, did I say McAllister? USS. Is
Callister.
it really not McAllister?
It's just Callister.
Oh, okay. That would make more sense why you kept giving me that look. So USS Callister, basically like a Star Wars homage.
Star Trek.
Yeah, Star Trek actually. Star Trek homage, like a 70s, 80s vibe. They got some goofy clothes. They do like, they have kind of like the
over the top
dialogues, kind of weird. But it's really funny, and it also in that episode, you see an IT professional who is the CTO of this corporation, who basically he does all the work, as in gets the product out the door, and is in charge of creating the software.
All the coding for the game.
Sure. So he was the brains behind it, and then you had a CEO guy who came in and ran the business. But that guy is antisocial, and then creates this offline version of the game, which he ends up creating characters, duplicate of the characters in the game, and then will
Of the people he knows in
yeah
real
of
life.
people he knows that he works with, and so he just gets DNA samples of them, creates a duplicate consciousness, puts them in the game. They feel like they're a real person in this game, and obviously don't want to. I don't know. Well, they can't even die in the game.
Right.
They can just get. I think he even makes a quote in the episode, and I don't want to get it completely wrong, but he said something about, I can make you on the verge of dying. I can make you choke on the verge of dying, and then give you breath, and then do it again forever for the rest of your life. That's scary.
Brain. He sucks. Power trip. Terrible.
Absolutely.
I hated him.
Fat Damon.
Fat Damon, dude.
That's it, man.
He looks...
Dude, he's got the scrunchy face. He's got the real big cheeks. He was pretty good in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
When he shot that kid. Best scene of the series. Damn
Nice.
kids on their little bikes. Just
Damn
conducting
kids.
business over here. Don't condone shooting kids on bikes.
Not at all.
But
this
get off your
guy-
bike first, and you can.
This guy,
Just kidding.
he takes the consciousnesses of these people that he works with, and he stuffs them into the game, and basically manipulates them as if they're puppets, and ultimately they do have their own thought process and consciousnesses, and so they can think and do, and they are aware that they exist outside in the real world of the real world. And so the plot the whole time, they're trying to figure out basically not how to get out, but how to stop falling under the control of the Captain Douche.
Right. And they, obviously find a plan or they try to conduct a planned escape. I think for the most part, this is very similar to White Christmas in that the same ethics come into play.
And I think we discussed it before where, the conclusion I came to is the guy who did it, Captain Douche, the guy who created this coding and copied the consciousnesses of these people, I have no problems with him doing that. Like, it's a little weird that he needed the DNA to be able to do it, and, it's creepy in that sense. But
you could say that that's against their
rights. But,
right, yeah.
It just, they are consciousnesses, they are basically lines of code, essentially.
Are they?
So you're saying that lines of code, not you specifically, but you would be arguing that lines of code have rights and they were being violated.
But they can make their own decisions. So are you just saying that's a really complex line of code?
Yes.
I think that's a fair argument. I guess the way that they humanize the people in the series make it seem like they are real people.
Yeah. I guess my conclusion is, did he do anything wrong? No. Is it creepy? Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I guess you're getting into what can you do in your private life that doesn't affect your work life or your outside life.
We talked about that already.
We talked about that already. But I think it's a good callback because this guy goes straight home, plays video games all night long, and that's his life. He likes being in control, and then he can go to work, get shit on by his boss and other coworkers, and then it doesn't matter because he'll be able to take it out on the people in the game.
True.
Well, anyways, don't waste too much time on that one, but I think we've made our point.
So there's one, just a couple, I guess, that I wanted to talk about that aren't super in-depth. The episode Nosedive goes into detail. It's basically a society that banks on and runs on people's social status. So as you go about your day, you have your phone out, and when you have interactions with people, you then rate that person on a scale of 1 star. Well, I guess 0 stars to 5 stars. And so I thought it was very topical. The episode came out. It was the first one of season 3. And I'm not going to get into too many plot details, but it's just the technology and how it relates to today's society and how, what if that was something that was implemented in today's society, or is it even already? You base people, oh my gosh, this person got like 900,000 likes on Instagram. They must be so cool. And that's basically the same thing. They got rated 5 stars. And it's mind-blowing to me.
I think like with most things, there's good and bad that comes with this. The good being, though, I've seen this, or I think we've seen this being applied in current real-life situations right now. You have an Uber or you have a Lyft. You pay for it. You rate it.
Sure do.
So you figure out how good that guy's rating system is. Once you see someone under 4 stars give you a car ride or is en route to give you a car ride, that's going to... Under 4 stars, mind you. This could be 3.5, 3.9 stars. If you see under 4, you're like, what happened?
Whoa.
So that puts a lot of burden on not the consumer, but the... I can't think of the word now.
The driver?
Not the vendor, but...
Driver.
Servicer?
Service provider.
Service provider. That's a better way. So this puts a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility on the service provider of putting out a good product out the gate. Because if you don't, you have that small window of getting a bad rating, no one will give a shit about you.
Absolutely. And I guess the other factor from that episode is that the society is kind of based off of this. And in order to achieve certain social statuses and like life events, you have to have a certain social status. So the girl in the episode, the main character, she wants to live in a certain apartment complex, but she needs to have like a 4.6 rating or 4.2 rating or whatever.
Did they explain why that was the case?
It's just like an exclusive community.
Would you compare that to a country club? And so if you're not of that status, maybe the homeowners association is like, well, this person doesn't really need to
We don't want them here.
Right.
Yeah, that's essentially the same
Okay,
thing.
I didn't know if it was that or if it was more of like a credit score.
No, just completely social status based.
Right. Now, did they have regular currency in the show?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a while.
Regular currency, but your ability to use the currency was impacted by your social status.
Okay. Now, did this happen on when they went to the store and stuff too? Did you...
The only examples they have of it is when she's trying to get into the apartment. She's trying to buy this apartment.
Right, I remember that.
And then at one point she needs... her like car breaks down or she can't charge it in a certain place, and so she's on her way to her friend's wedding, and so she finally makes it to an airport and is like, I'll just fly there. And then by the time she tried to buy a ticket, the only ones left were for certain people with a social status above a certain amount of stars, and by that time she had fallen so low that she was not able to purchase the ticket.
That's interesting.
Yep.
So you have to be of a certain status to get a certain seat on an airplane.
Yeah, and I think it was based on like similar to what we have with first class and economy and whatnot. There were no economy seats left.
And to be fair, in our society, it depends on how much money you have.
Or what deals you can find online.
Well, true. On the line. But yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting and fair argument that you can compare that to modern society. And I mentioned Yelp whenever I was saying the whole rating scores that, as soon as you get like a 1 star, that affects your future of your company. What negatives do you see that being? Do you see anything like that ever happening? Because I feel like that the way that we operate, that would quickly be considered discrimination.
Yeah, absolutely. It would further polarize the
it would definitely
current social hierarchy.
Right, and then you would definitely see a big you would see people pointing out in greater detail the 1% and the upper class against the lower middle class.
Yeah.
And even the upper middle to lower middle class.
So I think the only applicable areas is what you mentioned earlier with Uber and Lyft and stuff and the rating systems there, where it's like actually, you actually take into account those scores where you look and you're like, oh, nice, 4.9, this guy's going to be good, or, oh, shoot.
What really creeped me out about that episode was that they would rate you based off of your interaction with them. Like a one-time interaction or a consistent day-to-day interaction.
Right.
It showed that person running into someone at work and then,
hey, you just
5
made
stars.
my coffee, 5 stars.
5 stars. Hey, you just waved at me. 5 stars again.
Yeah.
And did you rate me 5 stars? Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, they were super concerned.
Right. And I think it's the same thing. What I was saying is that when you start rating too many people at an unrealistic system, kind of like how we do with Uber and Lyft, that if you give a 4, people get a little bit outraged. Why'd you give me a 4?
Well, you were good, not great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if if that were to happen in that in
heard
that
that a lot.
episode, they'd freak out. But what I'm saying is, you can't be honest in those sort of systems. Well, people are brutally honest, and they'll give you a 1 or 2 star review on Yelp. If you go in the the iTunes store right now, I guarantee you're going to see tons and tons and tons and tons of 5-star reviews for a good podcast. Even this one, probably wouldn't give 5,
No.
3.
maybe an earlier episode, 5 stars.
I would give it the exact same thing I'm giving this apple whiskey at the end of the episode.
Oh gosh.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. And so move on a little bit.
Well, sorry.
I would recommend, I guess, a couple episodes that we're not going to touch on here to take a look at and just let you know kind of what they have to offer. San Junipero was one of my favorite episodes, not necessarily because of the content, because it was set in 1987.
Is it sad or
and I
is
love
it
the 80s.
weird that I didn't watch that episode because everyone said it was amazing?
Well, see, and it's weird with me because, not to ruin anything, but it kind of sort of has a happy ending, I guess. Not really.
And I've read that.
And I hate happy endings. I want everyone to die in everything that I watch.
Well,
but
if I'm watching Black Mirror, I want something bad to happen.
right. But as one of the few bright spots in the Black Mirror universe, I did enjoy this episode, and I think the technology was really cool. Technology is that you can take your consciousness and plug it into basically a simulation, and you can go back to anywhere in time and kind of do anything within that simulation to experience those days again. And it's mostly targeted at older folks who are basically on their deathbed to kind of go back and experience the things one last time, or something new in this case, before their time is up. So that's definitely a cool one. Men Against Fire. Do you want to talk about that one just briefly?
Yeah, we can touch on that really briefly. In Men Against Fire, you see a number of soldiers. I'm guessing they're in the Middle East. I don't even remember if they show where they're at.
I don't know.
Well, because you see a bunch of, I guess they look like Americans, right?
Yeah.
They kind of like homeless people.
Yeah.
Basically, the government killing what they perceive as
What the soldiers
aliens?
perceive as
Creatures?
call them roaches.
Roaches. That's right. Which they look like aliens
Yeah.
and garb and.
They look like the one alien from Men in Black, the farmer dude who.
Oh
gets
yeah,
converted.
yeah. That's
what
actually
they
a good
look
point.
like,
Yeah. I couldn't tell in the episode because the way that they filmed it, the tone of the film, or it's like sepia or whatever, you know what I mean? Where it's not black and white, but it's kind of like brown or has like a tint.
Yeah, contrasted.
Sure, yeah. So, but anyways, back to the episode, you learn that these soldiers are being manipulated to kill these people. What they call roaches are actually people. And I don't remember if they get into why they killed the people, but it was basically the government wanting them to kill people. And the only way that they could convince soldiers to do what they were saying was to manipulate their vision so that they perceived these people to be alien creatures.
Yeah, these creatures.
In a sense.
In reality, they were killing innocent people because the government wanted them to accomplish whatever the government wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, whatever the goal was.
So how does that make you feel?
Terrible.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I agree.
terrible.
This was also not a great episode, in my opinion. But
I didn't think the execution was great, but I thought the subject matter was pretty good. I don't know if we would ever manipulate anyone the way that they did in that episode, but again, we've done some weird things in our past.
Yeah, and you can definitely think, the idea of terrorism, I understand that it's real and it happens, but at the same time, there is the idea of like influence, the government saying, oh my gosh, these people are terrorists, you have to go kill them. So it's the same concept minus the vision impairment, the augmented reality stuff.
To me, it was really messed up. Pretty dark, and I can't really remember much else than what happened. There was a really long monologue, and
go watch it yourself.
Yeah, go watch it. Tell us what you think about it.
Hated in the Nation, I want to touch on, just because bees are awesome. So this one uses, I'm assuming it's
bee technology.
Bee technology. It's after the bees go extinct, we have to use drone bees, which is actually being developed now.
Yeah, Google it.
Human-created robotic drone bees respond to, their task is to pollinate and do what bees are supposed to do. But they get hacked, and then they start responding to a hashtag on Twitter where the people basically tweet out something like someone needs to die or
I hate this person or
Yeah.
or this. I think it was more of like this person was a bad person, and the way that they put it on Twitter, I guess it manipulated the bees into
and
doing
whoever
their bidding.
had the most tags with that hashtag would get killed by the bees, and like people weren't 100% sure what was causing it at first, and then they finally figured it out, and ultimately at the end whoever hacked the bees got their ultimate revenge, and
Just desserts.
and what happened was every single user on Twitter who ever used the hashtag was killed. Spoiler alert, was killed by the bees. And I forget the exact total, but there were almost 400,000 people that were killed. And so it goes to show...
Don't talk shit over the internet that you wouldn't say in real life.
Yeah, basically. Don't sit behind a keyboard and use your anonymity, or I guess in this case not anonymity, to like bully people.
I think it's a pretty decent lesson. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone
Also,
who talks shit like that should get killed, though. I don't.
What might
agree
be
with that,
overlooked
but
here is basically if we can just save real bees and not have to use drone bees.
So we don't have to worry about this, and we can keep
won't
talking
have
shit.
to worry about this. So save the bees.
And the last episode I want to bring up, just because I found a couple of relevant articles and things that have been happening in real life that correspond or line up with the episode. The episode's called Be Right Back. And I actually didn't watch this episode, but talking to Vic about the episode, it sounded like a woman lost her husband, and she signed up for the service where she was able to communicate with her lost husband. Is that right?
Yes.
And then eventually, as the episode progresses, she gets an actual life form of him, like an actual...
It's not a clone. Kind
Maybe.
of a clone, but
Maybe.
like a robotic clone. I don't know.
Right, but it uses all of his... I guess it uses his ideas up to the point at which he died. And his same vernacular, vocabulary, anything, the way that he would say things or the things that he would say, they would be consistent with things he's done in the past. And so, I guess... I don't even know if there's an ethics behind that. It's just kind of creepy to me.
That's a little creepy.
But there's a service that you can sign up for, and it's called ETER9, which I'm guessing they're going for eternity in a way, but you can sign up for that, and then I think you sync up your phone or previous chats with someone, and then you can text them, and they would respond in a manner that would be consistent with their past texts. So that's weird. And then there's another guy. The story is on Wired.com. I can post it on the website. But it's basically a son who programmed his phone to replicate the way his dad would talk to him. And his dad passed away, but he's a programmer, and then he can do the talking to it like a Siri or text it. It responds exactly like it's his father, and it's really creepy.
It's a little weird.
I feel like that is just, it adds on to, maybe not adds on, but it prevents you from being able to let go and get over a situation like that, because it's going to happen. Everyone's going to lose someone in their life. And having this added to your life, I'm not sure if that's the best thing.
So that's going to be the question of our episode overall. Would you be interested in a technology, something like the grain or the Be Right Back episode with the essentially cloned person?
Or even, I guess, adding in more rating experiences in our society. Things that are driven by ratings rather than monetary value, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I don't even know how far you can get into that.
Or real experiences.
Yeah.
Like you're just rating someone 5, whatever. Or would you have your consciousness installed in a cookie and be your personal assistant?
Would you create yourself into a slave?
Would you create yourself into some sort of non-seeing but all-seeing, all-knowing consciousness?
I guess.
Kind of creepy. So definitely feel free to comment on what you would be interested in doing, and go watch Black Mirror. Every single episode, it's not serialized. What's the word I'm looking for? It's episodic. That's the word. So every single
anthology. Every
single episode can be watched as a standalone episode.
Right.
New actors, new plot lines.
Yeah, so you can watch it out of order. Watch it whichever one you want to watch first. Go for it. Go just for a random episode.
For all you single people out there, I would recommend Hang the DJ.
Yeah.
Season 4, episode 4. One of my favorite episodes. Gave me hope in the dating world.
There's no hope.
That's also true.
But yeah, so go in there, check out some Black Mirror. Tell us what you think about it. Hopefully this helped you out. Hopefully this brought up some good points or some ethical dilemmas that you experienced on your own right when you watched the episodes. Hopefully we had the same ideas, or even if we did not have any of the same ideas, hopefully this gave you the opportunity to think about them in more detail.
Because this technology, while it may be fictional now, it may not be later.
Right, it's right down the road. And right down the road to toilet talk.
Heck yeah. Speaking of technology, the greatest technology of all time, toilets. So
I thought you were going to say the squatty potty.
No, but we will talk about that.
I'll bring it up, yeah.
So today's toilet talk topic is toilet height, which we discussed a little bit earlier. You've got your low toilets.
That was my toilet impression.
Perfect.
I don't think that was good.
It's beautiful. You've got your low toilets, your high toilets. What exactly is the proper pooping position, and can you utilize a squatty potty?
Well, I'll go ahead and start with this one because the number one issue that I've faced in my life is getting on a toilet that's way too tall, and you're either on your tippy toes or, and this is the absolute worst case scenario, your feet are hanging off the toilet and are not touching the ground.
I've got to say, Steve, I am 4 or 5 inches shorter than you are. No, you're 5'9"?
Dude, I'm
You're
actually
5'7".
like 5'5".
No,
that's what the guy told me at the. Or that's actually what one of the ladies told me at the PA's office.
That's not real.
That's what they told me. I hope not.
Okay, because
5'6".
I'm like 5'3". Anyway, that's never happened. My feet have never dangled. I've been on tall toilets.
All right,
before,
okay,
but I've been tiptoeing it.
Let's bring it back to like middle school, high school, right? I didn't poop much in middle school or high school. That could be a whole subject in its own. But I'm pretty sure I've been on the toilet and I was like, wow, I can't even touch maybe like my toes. Yeah. There's a difference between like I can touch half of my foot on the ground and just grazing my toes on the ground. Like that's an issue.
Okay.
If I'm having to pick my tippy toes up just so I can kind of get a little bit of, leverage.
Oh yeah.
Then we have an issue.
Oh yeah. So consensus is low toilet greater than
low
high toilet
all day. Now, the lower the better.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, if there's a hole in the ground, that's the best you can get. Because
so how does that gross? How does that impact your position?
Well, it's science.
It is science. I agree.
The higher up your knees are, the wider is it your sphincter opens up.
Something along the rectum.
The rectum.
It is a sphincter muscle.
Yeah.
But it is the rectum.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. And so, according to science on this,
science.
I will quote science. Science loves being quoted. It slides out easier.
It's 100% true.
Yeah.
100%. I am backing this claim. I am on board with science.
Yeah.
I'm on board with myself. It's like if you're at the gym and you're doing squats, right? The goal of the squat is to get
go lower.
Right, to get your hips below your knees and then pop back up again. So the same goes with a proper pooping position. You got to get your knees above your hips. Mm-hmm. So that's where maybe a squatty potty could come in. If you're on a higher toilet, prop your legs up.
If your feet are hanging off that toilet and you can barely touch the ground, I recommend using a squatty potty.
Absolutely.
I actually have one right now, but I didn't realize how short my toilet was until I got one. My knees were at my face when I was taking a poop. I could not leverage it. I think there is a position. If you were to pull out a protractor, you could see what kind of angle you're looking at right here. Probably like a 45-degree angle with your knees up, and 45-degree from your knees to your waist to your head. Right? I think that's fair.
Absolutely.
90-degree angle, too wide. 15-degree angle, you got too much spread out.
Now, for a detailed analysis of this, feel free to check out the article, How to Poop Like a Samurai, featured on theartofmanliness.com. It's an older post, so you might have to search for it once you get there. And this is for you, men and women, even though the website is Art of Manliness, one of my favorites. It's artofmanliness.com. How to poop like a samurai.
Do you have can you give a summary of that? Because this is the first I've ever heard of this, and now I'm really curious.
A samurai, Stephen, would sit squarely on the seat, cross his leg so that his right ankle rested on his left knee. His left foot remained on the ground. He would place a hand on each knee and then straighten his back. That's it. It's all about angles. We've been over this already. That's a bit much
He's
for
crossing his leg while he's pooping.
that one's a little bit much for me. But as
I'm
far
gonna
as
try
getting
it.
the angles,
I'm going to try it next time.
yeah, getting the angles and
But I don't
opening up
think-
the rectum is very important.
I think rectum falls under the words of being weird to use.
I hate that word.
So rectum, moist.
Moist is a great word.
There's another one. Squirt. I don't know. That's
It's my favorite drink.
kind of weird. Yeah. So I think, is there anything else you want to touch on the toilet height? You're a smaller guy, Victor.
Yeah, as a smaller guy, lower is better. And I think just in general, like we said, science. If you're on a lower toilet, I mean, if you're like, we work with a guy who's like 6'7", so if he's on a low
can't
toilet,
imagine.
that's just like it's like you with your squatty potty.
Yeah, man.
So-
Your angle's being thrown off. There, I think there's an angle of maximum or minimum resistance.
Yeah, there's minimum, and then you go too far, and
You go too far, it's like radicalism.
Right.
You know, you go too far on one side. So that's our segment on toilet talk this week.
Hope you enjoyed.
I drank all of mine. Did you?
My ice melted.
You did not like it.
I didn't like it that much.
For a whiskey, I don't. I was really gonna give it like a 1.5.
Oof. Remember,
Like,
this is
right out the gate.
Bird Dog apple flavored whiskey, rocking in at 80 proof.
Yeah, 80
I will
proof.
say it does not taste 80 proof.
It doesn't. It's smoother once you've had a couple and it gets watered down a little bit. I know when I first poured it, or when you first poured it, the smell of it felt overbearing. Just the smell of it.
Honestly, as it's watered down with the ice cube, it's gotten more tolerable for
It
me.
has.
And I would say, like I mentioned at the top of the show, that's a solid mixed drink whiskey. Like, it's already got that apple flavoring in it. If you want
Right.
to mix that with like apple cider for a nice fall drink, heat it up or something like that.
Yeah, if you were big in the ciders, this is an excellent
I'm
whiskey.
a big
to
fan
get
of
into.
whiskey ginger ale as well, but I'll use a lot of different
Yeah.
whiskeys in that. But if I want to throw some flavor in it, sure, why not?
Yeah, so I highly recommend not drinking this straight at all.
I agree.
If you got an ice cube, 2 ice cubes, let it sit for a little bit. It's great after that, or it's better. It still is very sweet. I think we can both say that.
Yeah.
Do we need to get away from the rating system, or do you still feel comfortable with giving it a number? Because I was thinking about this in our earlier podcasts, and I don't know if like giving it a 4 and then going back and drinking something else, and I don't know.
Right.
How do you feel?
We would need to keep a running tally of what we've rated.
And I don't want anyone to be thrown off by how we're rating this, and by giving it an actual. I'm trying to burp over here. I can't think of the right thing to say. Giving it a numbered star, a number of stars. I don't know if we're doing it a disservice.
I don't know. Maybe it doesn't deserve a service.
True.
We drank Bird Dog apple whiskey. Meh.
Meh. No, I think it's good to describe in detail how and when it tastes good and when to use it, and
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to do it.
Sure. Who needs a rating
if-
system?
Sure. I mean,
let the
but
people
if
decide.
you were to give it a rating out of 5,
Out of 5,
what would you give it?
2.2.
I think I could get on board with that. I can go around 2 or 2 point.
I would say
2.5.
it's close to a 2.5 as a mixing whiskey.
Sure.
Like
yeah.
I said, if I want that little
I
bit
would
of
even-
flavor and
yeah.
sweetness, it's not bad.
Depending on what your situation is, if you like a sweeter drink, I recommend it. If you're looking to sit down and actually have some nice whiskey,
Nope.
No, absolutely not.
Definitely not.
No. All right, so that's it. That is episode 3 of the podcast. We appreciate you joining us for this longer episode. We hope you had a good time. Again, feel free to comment on our website.
Yeah, thanks for supporting the podcast, guys and gals, and giving it a listen wherever you may be listening. If you feel so inclined, please rate and leave us a review on iTunes. It really helps drive our popularity. Don't forget to give us a follow on social media. It is at My Shot of Life on both Twitter and Instagram. And check out our YouTube channel, where in addition to iTunes and Stitcher, we will be posting our episodes each week. Feel free to reach out to us through our various outlets with comments and suggestions on future episode topics, as well as different drinks to try and rate.
I'm Steven.
And I am Victor.
And always remember,
Drinks are better with friends.